Welcome to This Week in Surgery Centers. If you're in the ASC industry, then you're in the right place. Every week, we'll start the episode off by sharing an interesting conversation we had with our featured guest, and then we'll close the episode by recapping the latest news impacting surgery centers. We're excited to share with you what we have, so let's get started and see what the industry's been up to. Hi, everyone. Here's what you can expect on today's episode. Today is the third and final part of our 3-episode series on expanding your ASC. We've covered how to bring on new physicians, how to add new specialties, how to add a new operating room. And today I had the opportunity to sit down with Greg DeConciliis to talk with him about the expansion project he's actively working on. Greg's team realized a few years ago that they had outgrown their current 3 OR facility, so they are building an 8 OR facility a few miles down the road. And they are actually on track to open in January 2025. So we talked about how he knew it was time, financing, finding contractors, challenges, learnings, and everything in between. And after my conversation with Greg, we are going to end the episode with a brand new segment. I usually try to rotate between sharing the latest news and sharing helpful data, but I thought it would be good to add a new segment around using AI at your ASC. It can be really tricky to know how you can start using AI today, especially if it's a subject you are a bit wary of or just have not had a lot of exposure to. So stay tuned until the end, and I'll walk you through 3 very safe and very free ways you can start using AI today. Hope everyone enjoys the episode, and here's what's going on this week in surgery centers. Greg, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You are actually the final episode in our 3-part series that is all about expanding your ASC. And I know you are about to do exactly that. So can you please share an overview of the project you're working on and what does expansion look like for you?
Sure. So I've operated our 3-room ASC, 3 OR, 1 procedure room ASC since 2004, over 20 years now, and seen the growth in the industry and kind of the highs and not too many lows, but obviously COVID for everybody was going to slow down. But we recognized probably a few years ago that we had to expand to a larger location. A lot of that came on because of the growth of our practices. They're the ones obviously who fill our ORs, and our practices grew tremendously and took in a bunch of new young surgeons, and everybody wanted block time. And again, we knew because of that and because of people just constantly reaching out that we needed to expand. I say if I had 7 or 8 ORs now, we would actually probably have most of them full. That's what the need is. And so our 8 OR project just received our DON approval last month, and we are actively under construction. We're set to get the certificate of occupancy in December of 2024. And so realistically, building in any kind of any further delays, which there really haven't been, we're looking at January, February of next year for sure.
Very cool. And so how many providers do you have total?
So there are about 50 surgeons who have interest or have ownership interest or interest in operating at the facility.
Got
What
it.
we've seen in our area in Massachusetts is that there is very little OR capacity, and the hospitals are really overconstrained because of staffing issues, anesthesia issues, et cetera. And what we've had providers just jump over the border up in New Hampshire where there's no CON, DON regulations. And so a lot of them have been involved in surgery centers right across the border. And so what we're trying to do is pull some of them back. It's a stressful situation for the surgeons and for the patients, and that drive is not easy. And for us, having our project is a 65,000 square foot project, and our ASC is about 35,000 square feet. And so the top 2 floors of the building are going to be the medical office buildings. And so once again, we're going along like we did here 20 years ago, the idea of a patient be seen there, be operated on there, and we'll also have physical therapy and MRI, those types of things. So it's one-stop shopping.
Yeah, very cool. So if we think about how you knew it was time, your ORs were bursting at the seams. And then just looking at the market, you knew that doctors were leaving the state to be able to perform the surgeries they wanted to. So you knew there was a need market-wise as well.
Yeah, us in orthopedics, I should have mentioned that earlier. We do orthopedics, some pain management, some general surgery. And so we're always the last to do things here, at least on the ASC side. As they've been doing total joints and spine for a long time. We were the first to do them here in Massachusetts on total shoulder, total hip, total knee back in 2016, 2017. But we haven't been able to really take that next step, although we're doing a fair amount of joints, because we didn't build our facility to have the proper sterilization capacity, the proper PACU capacity to have people stay longer, et cetera. And so we're doing all these procedures now, but we just want to be able to expand and accommodate those. Certainly COVID helped. I think when we opened up before the hospitals for elective surgeries, we had surgeons show up and try and use the facility, get some privileges, and then they realized the beauty of outpatient surgery and the efficiencies. And so, again, as I mentioned earlier, if we had this space right now, we'd have it full. And so we're taking advantage of that. It's a long process. I'm sure those who are listening for that reason. What does that process entail? And so I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the initial planning process. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, and this is not all rocket science. You guys all know, and unfortunately, you'll hear some kind of just common themes. But the big thing is, don't unless you've actually done it before, don't just think it's oh, I can do this type of thing. And I guess we can get to mistakes later on. I fortunately had some guidance, and I'll talk about that in a second. But there's some things you realize that it just doesn't make sense to reinvent the wheel. And so we had a developer that's helping us, and he's spearheaded the whole project, and he had the experience in actually building a new ASC, and so he didn't have the experience necessarily on the healthcare side and the regulatory side, but on the building side, that's a big part of this. And having someone who can give you expertise on when to pick the architect, design team, permitting, all that kind of stuff. And so he takes that and runs with it. And he's also been facilitating setting up the groups that we've put in place to get all these projects done. And one of my big things is, again, get somebody, a developer or somebody to spearhead the project with experience. I think if you have a management company, they typically are probably involved in this process, and they probably can do that for you. If you're a mom and pop shop who just know a management company, that type of thing, you're just with docs, again, reach out to somebody who's actually done that. There's consultants out there for everything. And so take advantage of that. We did a ton of networking early on. So if you don't know who those consultants are, talk to facilities that have done this. And you can even see them online in the articles you see out there, et cetera. You'll see who the places that opened, the places in your state that have opened, and just give them a call. I find that people oftentimes are willing to talk about it and talk about who they used and pluses and minuses of using those people. It was a big process. We toured a bunch of facilities. And I think what we found by touring early on, we found facilities that we liked and people who had good experiences. That's how we got our architect. Facilities that we liked their structure and we feel like they had it all together. That's where we got our attorneys from. So we didn't pretend we knew anything, and I've made that comment already, but we didn't reinvent the wheel. We leaned on people and networking and asking people questions, and then we got our experts. We have an equipment planning individual who takes all the stress out of all the equipment, which is a big thing. Use those experts, and again, don't pretend you can do this thing alone, because you want to lean on those people to do a lot of the legwork and get you focused and quarterbacking the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. You were part of our de novo series we did last year, but in talking to all these consultants, they had so many horror stories of people who tried to do it themselves, missed a step in the beginning, didn't realize it. Now they're 30 days from opening and they missed some certifications, and now they got to wait another 6 months.
Yeah, there's
So,
stuff we've missed, and I think it goes back to that developer you select or somebody who's going to be the point person for you. Ours was not involved in healthcare, and so there are some issues we've had along the way because of that. So again, really interviewing this person, knowing who you're partnering up with is really important. So.
yeah, for sure. So, how did you approach financing this project?
So our developer is pretty comprehensive, and this is one of the areas that was in his wheelhouse. So he actually helped us with securing financing. Healthcare, especially our market, is unbelievably financeable because especially we have a track record, right? We had a 20-year track record with amazing consistency as far as volume and revenue goes. And so the banks that a lot. Again, don't be an expert in finance. There's brokers out there. They get a fee, of course, but at least they'll do the homework for you. The same thing you always hear about, shop around, get multiple quotes, all that kind of stuff. But the developer did a lot of that for us. But I was in the room for those initial meetings with the banks. We had to make the decisions about locking the rate versus not locking. We've had the issues with budget overruns and how to deal with that. And we got 41 doctors to invest in the building and put up capital to build this building. And we did that because I think we had a lot of stuff organized, and the banks like that. Put your docs behind you and your history. If you've had history, get those records together, brag about yourself. And if it's a de novo project, again, you have docs behind you, you probably have a track record coming from somewhere. and just tell your story. And again, you'll be amazed that it's pretty financeable. Of course, when we did it a couple of years ago, rates were a lot better. But again, there's money out there to be had. So you just got to go after it.
Yeah, I would imagine having 41 investors near you at all times. Do you get a lot of questions? Do they pull you aside, ask for updates? How do you keep them updated on what's going on and happy?
Yeah, and one of the things I think one of our, I guess I could say it's a pitfall, but also what we've learned along the way is that over communicating is not a bad thing, right? So we have a lot of standing meetings. Again, I said this from the onset. It's a lot of work, a lot of work, and so you'll have to commit a lot of your personal time, if you will, in the evenings because you have to have your meeting in the evening with the doc, right? But you have them, and you'll find over time as I think people become comfortable with it those in-person meetings that become Zoom meetings that become email updates are all fine as long as you're communicating. But we have a lot of a board that's strong. Again, you want to have physician leaders if you're doing a physician project as a management company. Obviously, they'd have say as well. But have this board who's well versed, has all the different disciplines involved. If you're a multi-specialty center, and they're meeting often, probably once a month, and maybe even twice a week. I'm sorry, twice a month to start at least. And then you progress over time, and then you can bring in all stakeholders because they don't want to be as involved, and you know who they are, the people who don't really care as much, but they want to know. And you have these meetings scheduled, and some will show and some don't. Out of the 41 on those meetings, we sometimes get 7, 8, 10 people. When it's a hot item, we'll get half the people. So if it's really hot, we'll get everybody. And this day of Zoom and that kind of stuff, it makes it a little bit easier. But you have to over communicate. You have to give them what you need. And I always say, even an email or something that they can just read. And then if they ever come back to you, you always have your paper trail, right?
Yep, great advice. So, what unexpected challenges or issues have you encountered so far?
You have to realize if you're building a new project, the construction stuff is real. If you've done anything on your own construction project, there's constantly delays and subs that pull out or can't finish, and so expect the delays. Again, as long as you're communicating and have our construction folks have regular weekly meetings and they're constantly on top of it. That's why I think our date hasn't changed. I'll be honest with you, it really hasn't changed for a while because I think they do such a good job of meeting. And again, meetings can be difficult, can be a pain in the neck, but I think they're really important to keep everybody in the same schedule. Again, be prepared for construction delays and build that into your contingency, especially if you're planning on wanting to open right. Like for us, for example, we were in a spot right now, and what really triggered our move was our lease ending. And so we got an extension beyond when we think we're going to open because we're just planning for that. Be prepared for costs being out of whack. Our budget's changed in 2 years just because of strictly costs and materials that couldn't be delivered in time. So we've had to change materials, all that kind of stuff. So I think those are really important. When you do your loan, I think plan for that, built in a good contingency basis for that you can pull from if there's issues on the cost side or the delay sides. And then the last thing was, I think any hiccups we've had have been from not communicating. There's been times where information wasn't communicated on the construction side of things. And so I think I've mentioned that a number of times already. So just making sure everyone's aware, even if it's an email, that was comprehensive. I always advise when you're giving information to surgeons or physicians to really make it simple and bullets because everyone's busy with the basics, and then attach other information or more detail below that they can get to. But get those points up front in a clear, concise fashion because that's the only way they'll communicate with you or they'll actually read it. On the only other hiccups are we did a tour. We did it last week. Actually, we did a open house and that staff walked through. And even though I had employed a process where along the design decision-making tree, if you will, I pulled different people from different disciplines in. And the people who weren't pulled in, when they did the tour, they were like, oh, where's this? Where's that? And so you're never going to make everybody happy. But I think, first off, don't pretend you can how a nurse does things in pre-op or PACU when you don't work in that area or you can't speak to it. So bring people in. Not only does it add to like employee satisfaction because they feel like they're being involved, but again, they'll pick up on stuff you'll never pick up on. I never, ever make a decision design-wise or process-wise without involving my staff. I just know I'll make a mistake with it. And so if we've prevented some hiccups because we've done that, I wonder if we could have, I realized last week, if we should have involved maybe the whole PACU or nursing staff, because the other ones who weren't involved, then you get the, oh, why wasn't I involved? Or I think differently type of thing. So it's just one of those things. So again, just like you're involving the docs in this, you're communicating with them, you're communicating with the staff as much as possible. When you get to these complex equipment decisions, et cetera, or kind of flow decisions and processes, again, involve the staff, involve the docs, as many as you can, because you'll be, not only will it help you, but then you'll get more buy-in, and it just raises overall level of satisfaction.
Yeah, and I think even all your advice, this whole discussion, for me, the underlying theme has just been building that trust and maintaining that trust amongst everybody. And that's what you're doing with the over communication. For to have 41 surgeons buy in, like they have an extremely high amount of trust in you. And it sounds like you don't take that lightly. And but even with your staff too, keeping them involved, like everyone's just got to be on the same page. So, do you have any key recommendations for other ASC admins considering an expansion? If you could go back in time.
Yeah, I guess I'll just summarize with the things I've said already. Getting that developer, getting that point person, networking, touring places. Go actually take the time and go and tour, especially a place that's going to be similar. Like I toured larger centers, right? I toured larger ortho centers. Lean on your vendors. They have a lot of resources. A lot of them have the ASC teams now, especially the bigger, obviously the bigger companies, the Strikers, the Arthrex, the Smith and Neffys of the world. And they can do a lot of this legwork for you, especially with equipment selection, obviously. But they have teams of engineers, that all that kind of stuff that doesn't really cost you any money, and they can actually facilitate those tours. And so lean on those vendors as well. I talked about over communicating with staff and I'm sorry, with the surgeons and also the staff, involving them in the process. One thing I didn't mention was good legal. Make sure you have good legal representation. Again, somebody who's got experience. And you may have to have a vast team. You may have to have a team that's experienced with construction and who's reviewing your contracts and reviewing all that kind of stuff. They may have to have somebody who on the finance side that are reviewing elements of the finance of the legally. And then get an owner's rep so get somebody who can work for you and the docs. You have to pay them, and they'll be validating all of the construction work, and you involve them early in the process. And so they'll know what goes into these steps, and they'll be able to, it's a check and balance and money well spent on the contractor. And the last thing is a one that you probably is not as uplifting, but I think the big thing is if you're trying to do this and run a facility and think your day job is going to stay the same, it's not. So you may want to consider some kind of a path where there's somebody who can cover for you in your day job or do a bulk of that work. You're training somebody, you're mentoring somebody, so you can devote a lot of time, because it's a ton of time. I'm telling you, it's weekends, it's nights. And again, I don't want to be discouraging because the end result is huge, right? But make sure you're planning for the amount of work you're going to undertake to do this thing. And also, before you get into it, maybe you seek compensation, some kind of compensation for it, right? Everybody's getting paid in these projects, especially the developers and the lawyers and the consultants, right? But what are you getting for your work? And advocate for yourself and realize it's going to take a lot of time. It's a big step to undertake. So it's important.
Yeah, that's an interesting call out. So aside from your time, has the expansion project impacted the current surgery center's operations at all?
No, not only with, I guess I could say, the use of staff for some of these things, right? So maybe some financially a bit to some extent. We're going to start now in the fall and the end of the summer here to work on some of our structure. So like we only have a nurse manager structure now who oversees the entire clinical staff. We may go to a PACU manager, OR manager type. Our new structure may work out some of those kinks now. And so there may be some cost overrun down the road. Again, no impact now, but down the road, we may also start to hire and train, right? So we're building in that, as I mentioned, that contingency or that planning for some expenses coming up that we're going to need for the new center and hiring. That's obviously the biggest thing that people get concerned about, right? Besides all of this, you build it, and then how you going to staff it. So not only clinical staff for you, but also your anesthesiologist, right? A big issue these days. And so how are you going to staff that? And some of that may mean if the people are available now, we may have to hire them now and start to train them. And so we hit the ground running. But overall, the impact for our area is going to be pretty tremendous. We're a tremendously hospital dominated market. And so there's not a ton of ASCs. I'm the head of the ASC Association, and I will say that we've done a poor job because we're very stagnant. Our numbers haven't grown that much. We haven't dropped, I guess you should say. We're seeing some of the hospitals doing their outpatient thing, but not a lot of freestandings. And so to open up OR capacity, I think for our docs, and maybe even preventing those patients from going across the border and driving post-operatively for 2 hours after their knee replacement, I think that's going to be a good thing for our state and for our area for sure.
Fantastic. I do feel like I could ask you another 30 questions, but I guess I will just ask you the one question we do every week with our guests. What is one thing our listeners can do this week to improve their surgery centers?
You said you were going to mention this, so I thought about it. I'm like, I think I wonder if people always mention the thing they probably do the least, or they wish they did more, I should say. I just mentioned that this takes up so much of my time, and I feel like we had a really good center and a really great culture. And maybe for me, it's just I feel like I'm not as in touch with everybody as I used to be because I'm not up and about moving as much. And so my one thing I'd say now is again, get out there and meet with the staff and just see how they're doing, see what their issues are, see what's bothering them. We just had a staff meeting this morning and we had really good turnout and really good conversations. So I think the FaceTime is really key if you're in my spot as administrator. It shows you really care. Stop. And it's not just a breeze through. It's a stopping and seeing what people are doing. If you're clinical, maybe spend some more time in the business office. If you're business oriented, spend some time in the clinical staff. See what they're doing. See it. Learn. I think it's important. And the FaceTime for the docs is also the surgeons that are there. It also shows how much you really care. So building that time if you can, I think that's you can do that right now, right? So that doesn't take much. Just get up and get moving around. So that's my one tidbit. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. You've shared such great advice. To hear from someone who's actually doing it is super interesting and insightful. So thanks as always, and keep
Well,
us
again, thanks for having me.
posted.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Okay,
hopefully we'll
we'll
be
do.
seeing some LinkedIn announcements around December,
Sure.
January of your new facility.
I hope so. Fingers are crossed. Thank you.
Yes. All right. Thanks, Greg. Welcome to our AI segment, where I will share 3 safe, free, and helpful ways you can start using generative AI at your surgery center today. If you have reservations about using AI or have concerns about how it will be safely implemented in healthcare, you are certainly not alone. Anything that garners so much attention so fast should rightfully give you pause, especially when patient safety could be impacted. I feel strongly, though, that the best way to understand how AI works and what it truly is to just get started and start small and dip your toe in ways over which you have full control and there's virtually no risk. So I tried to keep all of that in mind when putting together these 3 examples. You'll definitely notice a theme with the 3 of them. They are meant to help with some of the lower value tasks, if you will, that are simply administrative. And by pulling in some support, you will save a ton of time. These examples don't include PHI. They don't pose any data risk to you at all. So you should feel very comfortable getting started. Lastly, you'll notice that I reference ChatGPT in all of these examples, as that is the AI tool that I use. They have a free version that works great, and I would recommend trying, but please know that there are other tools out there if you'd prefer a different solution. Okay, so use case number 1 is creating staff schedules. Scheduling staff at your surgery center can be a little complex and time consuming. You have to balance availability, skills, preferences, all while making sure that you have adequate coverage. So, ChatGPT can help with this kind of logistical headache. Here's how it works. So all of these will start with a prompt, right? And as you use ChatGPT or other AI solutions more, your prompts will get better and better, and you'll have to do less tweaking. But that's just something that comes with practice. First, you have to input your prompt, right? You want to input variables such as staff names, their availability, roles, shift preferences, any specific constraints like requested days off or maximum working hours. For example, this is a little simplified, but it should give you the concept here. You can use a prompt like, I have 5 nurses: Jenna, Daniel, Marie, Emma, and Caleb. Our morning shift runs from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., and the day shift is 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. We are open Monday through Friday. Jenna cannot work Tuesdays. Emma cannot do the day shift. Can you please create the schedule for the month of August? It should be as balanced as possible, and every person, except for Emma, should do both shifts throughout the week. So in this prompt, we're giving it kind of those boundaries and parameters. So within seconds, right, ChatGPT is going to analyze your prompt and is going to generate a schedule that optimizes staff allocation. I would say requests like this will probably be completed by ChatGPT in about definitely under 30 seconds. And you can actually converse with the system too, right? So you can say, actually, Daniel can't work August 23rd. Can you please tweak that? So you can go back and forth with the system, either tweak your prompt or just give feedback after you see what it spit out. And then you might realize you missed a holiday in there. You missed, okay, wait, I told you Jenna could do day shifts, but she can't, whatever it might be. You can go back and forth with the system like that. So by using AI, you just streamlined the scheduling process, and hopefully it'll save you a ton of administrative time and also improve staff satisfaction if they know it's done with if the schedule has been created in a fair and unbiased way. And then with all of these prompts too, over time, any AI tool will learn from your feedback and will continuously improve. So even if you didn't put it in the prompt, it's going to look at its memory history and it's going to see, oh, last time we did X and they liked it. So let's do it again, that kind of thing. So that's your first example, creating those staff schedules. Use case number 2 would be patient education materials. So, providing proper education to your patients obviously helps decrease the repetitive questions your staff gets. It helps make patients feel safer and keep them engaged, and it will also improve your outcomes. So, here's how AI can help. Let's say your ASC keeps getting the same patient question, right? How long will it take me to recover from my total knee arthroplasty? And you want to create some collateral to give to the patient or maybe even use on your website. So you can go to ChatGPT and say something like, my surgery center keeps getting the same patient question. How long will it take me to recover from my total knee arthroplasty? Can you please create a one-page document that very simply explains CPT 27447, answers how long it will take to recover, and any other frequently asked questions? A reminder that this procedure will be done in an outpatient setting. So that's your whole prompt right there. So it's funny because that last sentence, a reminder that this procedure will be done in an outpatient setting, is something that I've learned from using ChatGPT. So when I first put that prompt in without that reminder, it spit out everything I needed except it was for a hospital setting. So that was a tweak. So after I got back what ChatGPT created, I replied and said, "Thanks so much. However, this is actually going to be done in an outpatient setting. Can you please update?" And it did exactly that. So again, just learning those prompts and tweaks as you go. All of that to say, within seconds, ChatGPT will give you back what you asked for and typically will expand in areas it thinks would be helpful. Now, because this is going to the patient, you want to, of course, go through it with a fine-tooth comb, make any necessary tweaks. The system is really good, but it's not perfect, so that clinical review will be key. But if I had to guess, you'd likely be able to use at least 90% of what ChatGPT has created for you, and it might actually spark other content ideas, and you can continue using that content wherever you need it. So that second example was patient education. All right. And our last use case today is around post op instructions. So, very similar to the above, you could ask ChatGPT something like, can you please write very simple post op instructions to a patient who just had their cataracts removed? So, giving more examples of those prompts and that tweaks and how we're evolving our requests. Maybe that what they create is just a little too heavy on the medical jargon. It's a little too advanced. You could then say, thanks, that all looks great, but can you please use a tone that is compassionate and direct, and please explain it in layman's terms? So you can keep tweaking it as you go until you get the exact answer that you want. So now we're starting to add in guidance around tone and complexity levels, all of which obviously you can tweak in your prompt for the next time, but just a learning from this time. Now, again, this example of the post-op instructions is truly medical advice. You'll absolutely want to give it a read and make edits before publishing it. I would anticipate that you would need to update it based on your ASC's policies and what your physicians recommend, but it will hopefully get you maybe 80 to 90% there and save you a ton of time. So there you have it, 3 examples of how you can start using AI at your surgery center today. And quick recap, we're creating staff schedules, creating patient education copy, and creating post-op instructions. If you give any of these a try, or if you have any other ideas, please let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts. And we'll do this segment again on the August 13th episode, and I will share 3 new ideas. And that officially wraps up this week's podcast. Thank you, as always, for spending a few minutes of your week with us. Make sure to subscribe or leave a review on whichever platform you're listening from. I hope you have a great day, and we will see you again next week.